90% of you listening to this right now who are building a startup are going to fail.
Yeah, it's a brutal statistic.
It really is. And statistically, it won't even be because you ran out of money first. I mean, it will be because you built a brilliant, elegant solution to a problem that literally no one cares about.
Right, and the timeline of that failure is what really catches founders off guard. Like, if we look at the data from Founders Forum Group, it shows that only 10% actually fail in year one.
Which is surprisingly low, honestly.
It is. But the real graveyard is between years 2 and 5. That's where a massive 70% of startups die.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah, that is the period where, the raw enthusiasm wears off and structural reality sets in.
Because we only ever see the highlight reel, don't we? Like the press releases, the stock exchange bells, the massive valuation.
We don't see the messy parts.
Right. We don't see the brutal, precise engineering happening under the surface that keeps the whole thing from collapsing. Because if you just throw venture capital at a flawed foundation...
It doesn't grow. It just collapses faster.
Exactly. So today, we are mapping out the exact blueprint of how a startup survives that critical window and actually scales.
Because it requires looking at the anatomy of failure to really understand the architecture of success. I mean, beyond that massive 42% who fail due to no market need, another 29% eventually do run out of funding.
Okay, so money is a factor eventually.
Yes, and then 23% fail because they just have the wrong team in place. The margins for error are razor thin.
Totally. So to build this survival blueprint for you guys today, we're pulling from a massive stack of sources. We're synthesizing guides, data, frameworks from Founders Forum Group, Asper Brothers, Cerebral Ops, System of Flow, Promise Legal, Zapier, and Glitter AI.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. And I have to mention this because it's just too perfect. Two of the sources we actually tried to pull for you today, UseWhale and IdeaProof, were literal 502 bad gateway and blank error pages.
You couldn't make that up.
Right. Which is incredibly ironic because a 502 bad gateway is exactly the kind of catastrophic infrastructure failure we want to help your startup avoid today.
It's a very literal representation of the fragility we're talking about here. I mean, you cannot scale a business if the core product isn't built to handle growth.
Okay, so where do we start?
We have to start at the very foundation. The Asper Brothers Guide defines this as the scalable MVP, or minimum viable product.
Wait, okay, but if I'm building a bare bones MVP just to see if anyone actually wants this thing, shouldn't I just use, like, the cheapest, fastest no-code tool I can find?
Well,
Like, why do I need to worry about scalable architecture on day one if I don't even know if I have a real business yet?
it's a fair question, but there's a massive difference between a prototype and a scalable MVP.
Okay, break that down for me.
A prototype is disposable, right? It's like a sketch on a napkin to test an idea. But a scalable MVP is the absolute smallest version of a product that proves real value while being built on foundations strong enough for future growth.
So it's not meant to be thrown away?
Exactly. It solves one core job to be done exceptionally well. From a technical perspective, this means you're aiming for a simple but structured architecture.
Right.
In software, we often talk about starting with a well-structured monolith. So it's one single application, but the internal logic is cleanly divided.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. Is building a scalable MVP basically like building a starter home?
I like where this is going.
Like, you don't need a pool or a 3-car garage yet, but the plumbing and the concrete foundation better not crack when you inevitably want to add a second floor.
That captures the mechanics of it perfectly.
Yes.
You are pouring the concrete knowing the second floor is coming eventually.
Makes sense.
You don't need a massive, complex microservices architecture on day one. Honestly, that actually slows down early development.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You just need clean boundaries so that later, you can upgrade the kitchen without tearing down the living room.
So stick to the basics.
Exactly. This is why the Asper Brothers emphasize using mainstream, battle-tested technology. Things like React for the front end, Node.js for the back end, PostgreSQL for your database.
But founders seem to get easily distracted by shiny, exotic, new coding languages. Like, they want to use the coolest new thing.
They absolutely do, and it is a trap. I mean, if you use an experimental framework today, how are you going to hire developers easily in a year?
Right. Nobody will know how to use it.
Exactly. And how will you integrate with standard enterprise software later? Cutting those corners early, it leads to what they call the tech debt avalanche.
I want to dig into that. Tech debt. It sounds like like a high-interest credit card.
It operates exactly like one. Let's say you decide to write your own custom authentication system instead of using a standard one. Or you hack together a payment gateway just to save a week of time early on.
Seems like a good idea at the time, right?
Right. But 6 months later, you get a spike in real users, and that untested code just shatters. And fixing it requires halting all new feature development for months, just to rewrite the core logic. You are paying massive interest on a shortcut you took on day one.
So the takeaway for the listener is you don't innovate on the plumbing. You innovate on the value the house provides.
Perfectly said. Look at the Data Founders Forum compiled on Figma and Stripe.
Oh, yeah, these are great examples.
Right. Figma spent 4 full years in development before they truly pushed to market. They didn't just rush out a buggy tool.
4 years. That's an eternity in startup time.
It really is. They spent 4 years building a revolutionary WebGL rendering engine just to absolutely nail collaborative browser-based design.
And it paid off.
Massively. That patience, that obsession with the core architecture, it resulted in a $20 billion acquisition offer from Adobe.
And Stripe did something really similar with their developer experience, right?
Yeah, what did they do differently?
Well, from the sources, they realized the core job to be done wasn't just like processing credit cards. It was making the API implementation completely painless for the developer.
Ah, yes. 7 lines of code.
Exactly. 7 lines of code and you're done. That singular focus on one perfect mechanism got them a $95 billion valuation.
It's incredible. But, there's a flip side to this. You can have a structurally flawless product, beautifully coded, zero tech debt. But if the humans running the machinery are misaligned, the whole thing still shatters under its own weight.
Which means we need to look at the DNA of the startup, right? Your first 10 hires. The Cerebral Ops Guide is fascinating on this because it highlights how a scalable product demands a team capable of evolving alongside it.
Yeah, the timeline of hiring requires ruthless honesty about what stage you're actually in. We have to look at the divide between pre-product market fit and post-$500,000 in ARR or annual recurring revenue.
Okay, so let's start with pre-product market fit.
Before you hit that fit, you are optimizing entirely for learning speed. You do not need specialists. You need what the industry calls chaos athletes.
Chaos athletes. I love that term. Give me a day in the life of a chaos athlete.
Well, it's a generalist, right? Someone who can write back-end code at 9 a.m., jump on a customer discovery call at noon, and then figure out how to run a basic Facebook ad campaign at 4 p.m.
So they're just running on adrenaline and caffeine.
Basically, yes. They thrive in ambiguity. They don't need a playbook because they are literally writing it in real time.
Right.
But the moment you hit around 500,000 in ARR, the game changes structurally. You have a real product, real customers paying you, and you must start specializing.
And the sequence of that specialization is surprisingly rigid, according to the sources. Like, it's not just hiring whoever you feel like you need.
No, the order matters a lot.
For instance, it says you hire sales before you hire your second marketer, which, when you think about it, makes total sense. Marketing doesn't matter if you don't have the internal machinery to actually close the leads.
Exactly. You'll just bleed cash on ads with no return.
Right. And you hire customer success before product managers. Because keeping the customers you just fought so hard to win is vastly more important than building new features they might not even want.
That specific sequencing is what prevents you from building a top-heavy organization that burns cash without actually generating revenue.
Okay, but here's where it gets complicated. You're saying we need these chaos athletes early on who can handle immense stress and ambiguity, right?
Yes.
So why shouldn't a listener just hire a VP of sales from, like, a massive Fortune 500 company? Or, better yet, their best friend from college right out of the gate? Aren't your college friends the only ones who will work for cold pizza at 2 a.m. when you're bootstrapping?
Oh, this is the most common trap founders fall into.
Really? Let's take the VP of sales first.
Okay, so someone who thrived in a highly structured corporate environment often completely drowns in startup chaos.
Why is that?
Because they arrive expecting a playbook. They expect a dedicated lead generation team, an expense account, and when they realize they have to build the CRM from scratch themselves, they paralyze.
They're used to managing the machine, not building it.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the college friend? Why is that a bad idea?
Well, Cerebral Ops strongly warns against this. If you are going to hire people from your network, you should hire former colleagues, not college friends.
What's the difference? You know both of them.
The difference is, you know how a former colleague handles professional pressure? You know how they react to missed deadlines or how they process difficult feedback from a manager?
That's a good point.
Right. A college friendship is built on shared social experiences and pulling all-nighters, not shipping products under extreme financial stress. The power dynamics of suddenly being someone's boss will destroy the friendship, the company, or usually both.
Wow. Okay, let me push on another hiring trap the sources mentioned.
Hmm.
The brilliant asshole tax.
Oh, yes.
If someone is genuinely a 10x developer, like an absolute genius who pushes the product forward, isn't it worth putting up with a difficult personality?
Only if you want to systematically destroy your entire culture.
Really? It's that bad.
The brilliant asshole tax is a very real phenomenon. The data suggests one toxic top performer will cost you 3 to 5 other great hires.
Wait, 3 to 5 people will quit because of one person.
Yes, and they don't just leave overnight. First, they stop volunteering new ideas in meetings because they don't want to get shot down by this person. Then they quietly disengage from the culture. Then they leave.
So you're trading team output for one guy's output.
Exactly. You are sacrificing the compound output of a healthy team just for the isolated output of one individual.
That is a massive hidden cost. 3 to 5 great hires lost just to appease one ego.
This is exactly why the sources emphasize the 60-day rule. You must set crystal clear 30, 60, and 90-day expectations from the literal moment an offer is signed.
And if they don't meet them?
If a new hire is consistently missing those marks or exhibiting toxic behavior by day 60, you have to fire them fast.
People hate doing that, though.
Of course they do. Founders delay this because the conversation is deeply uncomfortable, but delaying is just burning runway and signaling to your high performers that mediocrity is acceptable.
Okay, so let's say you've survived the early hiring minefield. You have a scalable MVP, you've brought on these incredible chaos athletes who are evolving into specialists, and you've protected the culture. The startup is growing fast.
This is a good place to be.
It is, but relying on the unwritten, collective memory of 10 sleep-deprived people is a ticking time bomb.
It really is.
So how do you extract the genius out of their heads and then institutionalize it?
This is where we look at the scaffolding of the company. SOPs, or standard operating procedures. As the team grows beyond the founders, verbal instructions and ad hoc Slack messages completely break down as a management system.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
Systemaflow outlines 5 specific areas where growing startups fracture without documentation. That's onboarding, task management, meeting structure, SOPs, and planning.
And without that?
If you do not have templates and documented processes for these, the founder becomes the ultimate operational bottleneck. Every single decision, every minor question, every little workflow has to pass through their inbox.
Okay, let me try an analogy here. Is a good SOP template essentially like a bowling alley with bumpers?
I love that.
Like it just keeps the team out of the gutter without restricting the actual power of their throw, right? It shouldn't feel like a terrifying 47-field IRS tax form.
And that is the exact philosophy you need. An SOP is not about micromanagement. It is about reducing cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Right. When an employee doesn't have to spend mental energy figuring out how to do the routine parts of their job, they can allocate that brain power to actual problem solving.
Which is what you're actually paying them for.
Exactly. But Zapier and Glitter AI are quick to point out that an SOP cannot be a massive monolithic PDF that no one ever opens.
Right. Zapier breaks this down into different formats based on the task. Like
Yeah.
you don't use a hammer for a screw.
Correct.
You've got the linear or step-by-step format for simple routine tasks, like uploading a blog post.
Yep.
Then you have hierarchical templates for massive complex processes like onboarding a new enterprise client where there are parent tasks and subtasks.
Exactly. And then you have flowcharts for decision-based troubleshooting. Like if a customer calls with a bug, the flowchart guides the support rep's diagnostic process visually.
Oh, that makes sense. And checklists.
Checklists are reserved for strict compliance, where missing a single step means a security breach or a legal issue.
Okay, so Glitter AI actually digs into the anatomy of these documents.
yeah.
And rather than just listing steps, they say a functional SOP needs specific architectural elements to be useful.
Yes, and 2 of them really stand out as counterintuitive, but absolutely vital. The first is the decisions and exceptions section.
Explain how that works in practice, because an exception sounds like something you can't plan for,
Well, most SOPs just tell you what happens when everything goes perfectly.
which never happens.
Exactly. Things rarely go perfectly. The decisions and exceptions section explicitly outlines what the employee should do when an edge case happens.
Like what?
Like if step 3 fails, do they email the founder? Do they override the system? Do they issue a refund? By documenting the exceptions, you prevent the founder from getting 50 Slack messages a day asking, hey, this weird thing happened. What should I do?
Oh, so it empowers the employee to make the call themselves.
Precisely. The second vital element is the verification section.
What's that?
It's about accountability. How does the person doing the task actually prove to themselves and the system that the job was done correctly before they move on? It builds quality control directly into the process.
And the ultimate payoff for doing all this heavy lifting. Zapier points out that once a process is fully documented and standardized through an SOP, you can start identifying the repetitive parts and automate them.
Yes, this is the holy grail.
Because you cannot automate chaos. If everyone does a task differently, software can't help you at all.
Nope, it'll just make the chaos faster.
Right. But once it's standardized, you can use automation tools to handle the busy work, giving founders a truly hands-free approach to scale.
Because standardization is the mandatory bridge to automation, and automation leads to exponential scale.
Boom. Okay, so you have the machine built, the MVP is hunting, the team is executing flawlessly, the SOPs are keeping it all on the rails. Now you need the fuel, the money. Let's talk about surviving Series A due diligence.
Oh, this is where many visionary founders experience a brutal wake-up call. The Promise Legal Series A checklist makes one thing very clear. The Series A gauntlet is an entirely different universe compared to seed funding.
Because seed funding is more about potential.
Exactly. A seed round is often raised on a compelling narrative, maybe a charismatic founder and a working prototype. But institutional investors at the Series A stage will not hand over a $10 million check based on potential. They require rigorous, empirical proof of traction.
And the benchmarks are just unforgiving. For a SaaS company, investors generally want to see between $1 million and $3 million in annual recurring revenue.
Which is a lot. It's massive. And they want to see over 100% year-over-year growth to prove momentum. Plus, the timeline to actually close this round. You have to plan for the diligence process to take 5 to 9 months.
Which means if you start raising when you only have 3 months of runway left in the bank, you are already dead.
Wow.
But hitting the financial metrics is only half the battle. The legal due diligence is where seemingly successful deals completely fall apart at the finish line.
Yeah. Let's talk about the legal traps, because the sources mention cleaning up your cap table and eliminating dead equity.
Yeah.
Is dead equity basically like carrying a mortgage on a house that someone else gets to live in? You're doing all the maintenance, paying all the bills, doing all the hard work. But when the house eventually sells, some guy sitting on a beach gets half the profit.
That is a very accurate and very painful way to look at it. Dead equity is stock held by departed co-founders or early team members who are no longer actively contributing to the company. So imagine you start a company with a friend. You split the equity 50-50. 6 months later, they decide startup life isn't for them and they leave.
Right. And if you didn't have a strict vesting schedule in place, meaning they have to earn that equity over 4 years, they walk away legally owning half your company.
So fast forward 2 years, you are working 80-hour weeks trying to raise a Series A, and half the financial upside belongs to someone who hasn't answered an email in 24 months.
Venture capitalists absolutely despise this. They want their capital to incentivize the people who are actually in the trenches doing the work today.
Makes sense.
If a VC sees massive dead equity, they will force you to clean that up, buy out the departed founder, or restructure the entire cap table before they will even draft a term sheet.
And there are other hidden landmines in the legal hygiene checklist, too.
Oh, many. You need a recent formal 409A evaluation.
What is that exactly?
It's not just a vanity metric. It is a formal appraisal by a third party to determine the fair market value of your common stock.
Okay. Why do VCs care about that?
They look at this to ensure you've been issuing stock options to your employees at the legally correct strike price. If you've been doing it wrong, it creates a massive hidden tax liability for the company. And the VC does not want to inherit that mess.
Okay, that's scary. The IP assignment issue from the Promise Legal Guide also stood out as a massive red flag.
The chain of title for your intellectual property must be unbroken. Every single person who has ever touched your code base, your designs, or your product founders, employees, and especially early contractors must have signed an invention assignment agreement.
Wait, so if a freelance developer built a core part of your MVP 3 years ago and never signed over the IP rights?
Legally, you do not own your product.
You're joking.
I'm not. A VC will halt the deal immediately. You will literally have to track down a contractor from 3 years ago and beg them to sign a document so your $10 million funding round can proceed.
That is insane. Okay, so let's assume you survived the diligence. You track down the contractor, the cap table's clean, the ARR is hitting $3 million. You finally get the term sheet. You've won, right?
Not necessarily. The term sheet itself can be a trap.
Of course it is.
The Promise Legal Guide warns founders to be incredibly careful here. In a standard Series A, you should expect 15 to 25% equity dilution. That is normal.
Okay, so you give him a piece of the pie.
Right. What is not normal and what you must fight are founder-unfriendly terms like full ratchet anti-dilution protection.
Walk me through the actual math of a full ratchet. Why is it so dangerous?
Imagine you own 20% of your company, you raise a Series A at a high valuation. A year later, the market crashes and you have to raise more money at a lower valuation. That's a down round.
Right.
If the Series A investor has full ratchet protection, their original purchase price is retroactively dropped to match the new, cheaper price.
Wait, so they just get more shares?
Yes. To make the math work and keep their ownership percentage whole, the company has to issue them massive amounts of free shares.
And those shares have to come from somewhere.
They come from the founders and the employee option pool. Your 20% ownership could be mathematically crushed down to 5% overnight, entirely out of your control, just to protect the investor's downside.
Oh, man.
You also have to aggressively negotiate against anything greater than a 1x liquidation preference.
What does that mean?
It would mean investors get paid back double or triple their initial money before you or your employees see a single dime in a company sale.
That is an absolute gauntlet.
It really is.
But surviving it means you have the structural integrity and the capital to take over a market. So let's pull all of this together for you.
Let's do it.
Beating that brutal 90% failure rate isn't about Silicon Valley magic. It is about precision engineering from day one. It requires building a modular, scalable MVP that solves one problem perfectly without buckling under tech debt.
Right.
It requires the discipline to hire generalist chaos athletes who can eventually evolve into specialists while violently protecting your culture from toxic high performers.
Yeah.
It means implementing resilient SOPs that empower your team to handle exceptions, preventing you from becoming a permanent operational bottleneck. And finally, it demands maintaining pristine legal and financial hygiene so you can survive the extreme scrutiny of institutional investors.
All of these elements, they form a machine, a complex mechanism designed to process human effort and venture capital and output exponential growth. But, if we step back from the mechanics of cap tables and code-based architecture, this raises a really profound question.
Oh, what's that?
It isn't explicitly written in any of these checklists, but it is the natural, inevitable endpoint of all this scaling.
Where does all this ultimately lead the founder?
Right. We've spent this entire time talking about how to build the machine of your startup to handle massive, unrelenting growth. But consider this. What happens to your own personal identity when the company scales so successfully that it no longer needs you to survive? If you build the SOPs perfectly, if you hire the brilliant specialists, if the product hums along without your daily input, you effectively make yourself obsolete to the daily operations. Are you building a business you want to run your hands through forever? Or are you building an entity explicitly designed to eventually outgrow its creator?
Are you building a business or an entity designed to outgrow its creator? That is a heavy, fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these blueprints, check your foundations, and start engineering your scale today.